This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Northern Kentucky University political scientist Michael Baranowski. I'm joined today by my not one, but count them two conservative counterparts, Oklahoma Christian University political scientist Trey Arndorf, as well as University of Austin economics professor Tim Kaine. Trey and Tim, great to have you guys back for the bonus show.
It's good to be back. I didn't know that Trey was a conservative. I thought I was just very convincing last time.
well, Trey's history is, we've batted this around. I would say that Trey is a libertarian who's not necessarily that much of a conservative anymore exactly. But Trey, I don't know, I'm putting words into your mouth, but I get the sense you're like more of a Paul Ryan era pre-Trump conservative. That would be how I would describe you, sort of.
That is absolutely fair. As longtime listeners might remember, I was the one who worked and I actually did things for Republicans, and then I was working in Florida, thinking about running in Florida, and Trump ran, and I came out against him and actually got thrown out of the Republican Party of Florida for that position. And I said, oh yeah, well, watch me work for a Democrat for once. And yeah, so no, I have not had a comfy relationship in the Trump era with the Republican Party, but as Ronald Reagan once famously said, I don't think I left. I think they left me.
There you go. Oh, yeah. Well, so, guys, I thought we would start today by talking about, I'm almost embarrassed to say it out loud, One Big Beautiful Bill, because that's the actual name of it. And this is where we've sunk to as a society, where that's what we're called. But okay. But, there are a lot of things in that One Big Beautiful Bill. Of course, there are. Plenty of them are, I think, deservedly controversial. But I think there's one that you could argue should at least have some bipartisan support, or at least could in a less hyper-partisan era. And that's that plan to give every American newborn a $1,000 investment account. How it would work is that the accounts would be established for all U.S. kids, citizen children born between January 2025 and January 2029. They'd be put in an index fund managed by the kids' legal guardians. And then guardians or anyone else would be able to contribute up to $5,000 more every year to that account, with no withdrawals allowed until the child turns 18. Now, the money is intended to go toward education, buying a home, or starting a small business, with any distributions toward those particular ends being treated as capital gains, which are taxed at a lower rate than ordinary income. If account holders under the age of 30 use that money for any other purpose, it would be taxed as ordinary income and face an additional 10% tax on top of that. And so the reason why I think this could attract lawmakers on both sides of the aisle is because it has. In fact, in an earlier era, just a few years ago, it's called baby bonds, and it's been repeatedly introduced in Congress by Senator Booker and Representative Presley starting in 2019. They introduced it, 3 times in total. It's never gotten any real traction, though. The latest attempt by them, which was in early 2023, just had 16 co-sponsors in the Senate, 33 in the House, all of them Democrats. So I don't know. Tim, you're a resident economist here. I want to start with you. What do you think about the so-called Trump accounts? Or if you're a Democrat, you can call them baby bonds, I suppose, whatever.
Yeah. It does have this rich bipartisan history to give Americans money when they're having children, to help families. This is something that Senator Rubio, when he was senator, now Secretary of State, used to talk a lot about. I understand the appeal. I am very skeptical that it's a good idea without a broader framework of getting our budget balanced. And not to harp on how we ended our show last week, but it was, we've got this massive $37 trillion deficit. Now, this overall OBBB is expected to add to the deficit, according to the CBO. I don't know about that. Are they using what we call dynamic scoring? Dynamic scoring says you look at the effects on how people behave. Making the previous tax cuts permanent, converting some things to expensive, I think might have a nice little growth boost. Even so, we've got a deficit, guys, and I'm haunted by it. And I'm one of those conservatives that think that matters more than neat little policies to help families. The thing that'll really help families, that'll really help babies, is balancing the budget. And if that's not part of the conversation, then I'm out. I'd be a maybe on this whole bill. Definitely be a maybe on the baby bonds.
Trey, what about you?
So Tim, I finally have somebody else who we seem to agree economically on the show. I'm so excited. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that frustrates me about the Trump era is the way we have just seemingly, the Republican Party has just given up on the idea that we need to worry about, finance. It's just gone, and that is frustrating. I mean, now, but I do want to put that in context. If I was taking a look at this, where I would be cutting and where Republicans seem to want to be cutting on this would be very different places, right? You mentioned what do we need to do for families, and you're absolutely right, because one of the things that really steals people's accumulation of money in a lifetime is inflationary policies, right? And a big part of what creates that, and you're rightfully pointing that out as well. I mean, again, thank you for being our economist here. The costs of financing the debt have deep impacts on the amount of fiscal wealth as you move forward in time, to put it in more layman's terms. And so that kind of silent tax is not something that's easy to see. And so it's we were talking about, policies versus, having good images. And it's just a tough one to have an image on. But to come to this one, so Mike, I think this is a great kind of example. We want to do things for families. We want to help them. So let's give kiddos $1,000.
Yeah.
So let's assume that we put that $1,000 into that index fund. Let's assume that it's making somewhere between 4 to 6% as an index fund.
Too low. Trey, I'd say 10. That's the historic average for a market. Go higher, Trey.
Okay, fine. Let's do your math. Let's put it at 10. Let's assume that you have no downturn during that 18 years, right? Let's assume you're doing that 8. You are going to be that kiddo's going to have somewhere between $2,000
$5,500. I did the math.
And $5,559, somewhere in that range, right? Yep. Somewhere between that 4 and that 10%. And that's fine money. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I like the fundamental principle of having things in the market, but it does a couple of things. One is it means that you are going to have kind of a weird influx into the market at different times for these babies for one particular year. But two, okay, so let's say, for example, let's make it personal, for example, right? I mean, that isn't even enough to cover somebody's total max out of cost 1 year for a medical, right? Like, woohoo, my kid has $5,500, but I could, that made a typical max out of pocket on healthcare is going to be $7,000. So, I mean, if you really want to help families, I think the item that I would be most interested in is going to be not these kinds of accounts that mature. I mean, that's not even a semester at a college. Could we do something on the healthcare policy? Could we do something on those kinds? That seems to be more interesting. It sounds good. It's a fun little marketable thing. The total cost of investment up front is not a ton, but so you're somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 at the end of this. That's not really enough to do much in terms of a startup. That's not really much to do something towards college. Heck, that's barely a used car. I'm just not sure.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
So let me challenge, what's the benefit of it, right? If I were to put on my pro MAGA account hat for kids, it's just educational. The economics of it doesn't really move the needle. But, imagine you're a family that doesn't have any savings and suddenly there's this account, you're not allowed to dip into it and you can see it growing and you understand how markets work. That's not a bad investment. I mean, I like the fact that it's actually not too expensive and yet it educates every single family that their kid has some money. Okay, right? And I would be all for it if there weren't this, meteor heading toward Earth called the future national debt crisis that's going to, bankrupt the dollar. Otherwise, I'm all for it.
Yeah, because I think
if you want to do things like this, and I agree with you, Tim. I mean, so for example, we have this huge increase in spending on some really questionable border policies. We're increasing military across the board. I mean, there are areas that we could cut back in today if we really wanted to be serious. But the one big beautiful bill doesn't really seem to be about that. It seems to be about it's the Republicans' version of a Democratic spending bill. We're going to spend a bunch of money and we're going to pretend that somehow magic fingers that the growth from all of this is going to offset the costs, and that has almost never happened, especially in the context of this many deficit increasing items.
Well, I mean, if you're going to spend money, I think you guys might agree with me on this, is that this is about one of the most pro-growth ways you can do that sort of thing, right? Given how this sort of thing is structured. And it seems odd to me, maybe not actually, I won't say it's odd to me, but it's interesting to me that when 2 Democrats introduced it repeatedly, it got literally zero support in Congress, but yet somehow now it finds its way into this one big, beautiful bill, which suggests to me that, obviously there's a lot of politics at play here. It's not like all of these Republicans who think this is a good idea now just didn't think it was when Booker and Presley were introducing it.
Well, but the problem, I mean, you hit it, Mike. I mean, the problem here is it's not about the policy. It's about winning some points. It's not about the outcome. And again, we were talking about it in terms of me personally, but the Republican Party of today, when it comes to trade policy and domestic economic policy, George W. Bush couldn't win a primary in the current Republican Party if his ever-loving life depended upon it. In other words, if we could just push his age forward and move him here, he would never win. It is a fundamentally different party on those 2 issues. It's one of my frustrations. So I don't disagree with you, but I think we have seen a realignment in the Republican Party on those 2 issues so radically that it is almost head spinning for anybody who has either been through it or who studies it.
I guess the way I feel about this in part is I like the idea. In fact, there are a few states that have similar type programs. Connecticut and the district, not a state, but they have a similar type program for kids, only for kids born to families receiving Medicaid. California's has to do with kids in foster care as a result of COVID. But I feel about this kind of how I felt about, in a weird way, remember those COVID economic impact payments? I got one. And my first thought was, why am I getting this? I'll take it. I didn't return it or anything like that, but I didn't need that check. To me, it was wasteful government spending. On one hand, I would be much happier with a program like that in Connecticut and DC that's much more targeted. But then but the problem with that is getting buy-in. If it's not universal, then that creates all kinds of political difficulties, but that also raises the cost. So it's kind of a mixed bag to me, but I like the general idea because I'm positive that far too many American families, especially at the lower end of the spectrum, just are not exposed to the sort of investment economy, don't have those sort of accounts, and anything that can get them at a reasonable cost. We're talking $14.5 billion over 4 years, which honestly, like behind the couch cushions money for the federal government. I think that the gains, the pluses outweigh the minuses on this one. Thanks for listening to this Politics Guys interview. If you want to get in touch with us for any reason, you can do that in a bunch of ways. There's email, mail@politicsguys.com, as well as Facebook or X. Links for those are in the show notes. There's also our Discord discussion forums for supporters, which I am on all the time, probably too much. No. But anyway, if you're not already a supporter, I hope you'll consider becoming one. When you become a supporter, you not only help us continue the work that we're doing, but you get ad-free versions of everything we release, as well as the full-length midweek episode, as opposed to just that 15 or so minute preview. And if you'd like to get that full-length midweek episode, but you're not in a position to financially support us right now, not a problem. Send me an email, mike@politicsguys.com, and I will get that set up for you. And whether you're a supporter or not, it really does help us out if you subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever podcast app you use, as well as sharing episodes on social media. And finally, a very special thanks to our executive producers, Wilma Moreno, Daniel Toe, Ryan Beasley, Don Oglesby, Derek Schmidt, Dakota Heath, Jason Chrysler, Dave Dean, Jeremy Larson, and Brian Matza.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,